Hello and thanks for joining today's tour. Today we are going to be going around one of the oldest streets in London, which is Fleet Street. And we're going to be starting here at Blackfriars, which I'll show you in a minute. But there is Blackfriars station behind me here. But before we do that, and before we start the tour, I would just like to give a very quick shout out to Brian. Now, Colin, you may ask, who is Brian? And to be honest, I've got no idea, haven't a clue. But Brian is the very first person, apart from friends, relatives and people I've had to perform sexual acts for, to subscribe to my channel. So for that reason and for that reason alone, I'd like to thank Brian. Thanks for the vote of confidence, and I hope you stick with us when we start doing our more walks. Alright, so now we've got that out of the way, let's move on with today's tour, which, as I say, is going to be Fleet Street. It's predicted to rain at some point, and it's a bit breezy, but we'll see how we go. Let's see how far we can get before the rain starts. Alright, now we're going to cross over here. And we're going to have a look at this very lovely pub. So this is called the Blackfriar, and the reason why this is called Blackfriar, in fact the whole area is called Blackfriars, is because if you had been back here in the 1500s and sometime before, there was a big monastery here. It was a Dominican monastery, and the friars that worshipped there wore black cloaks. There's probably a particular name for those robes, but they were the ones dressed in black, and so they were colloquially known as the Blackfriars. And this pub, which was initially built in 1875, is on what would have been the outer edge of the monastery. Now, I say it was built in 1875, but it was redesigned in 1905 in very much what you would call an Art Nouveau style. And it really is a nice one. And if you're ever here, do pop in and have a drink. It's not that often I drink up London these days, but in times gone by I have had a few drinks here, and it is a lovely pub, and the decoration inside is gorgeous. So you'll be able to see pictures of it on their website. So if you just look for the Blackfriar, it's a Nicholson's pub, you'll be able to see some of the interiors. Alright, but that's the reason why the whole area, and this particular pub in particular, has got the name Blackfriar. Now, next thing we're going to do is cross over, hopefully without getting run over. That would be the main aim of today. And I'm hoping the wind isn't bothering you too much on the mic while I'm doing all this. But we should be a bit more sheltered now. It's just we're right by the Thames where we are. Now, just want to show you something. So, just on the other side of that roundabout there, that's what Blackfriars Bridge. So obviously the Thames is running underneath that. But if you look at the name of the street, I don't know if you can read that, it says Watergate. And it's nothing to do with Richard Nixon. It's basically because in times gone by, this was how far the river came in. And all the land that's up that way now on the embankment is all sort of reclaimed land. But this is how far the River Thames used to stretch to, and this is where the gateway to the Thames was. And it was a gateway from what was initially a palace. There was a palace here called Bridewell, and then in 1553 it became a prison, a house of correction. And basically what happened was, it was a palace during Henry VIII's time. He had moved up here temporarily because his main palace down in Whitehall down near Westminster had burnt down, and this is where he basically relocated to for a period. And then when he died, his son Edward VI in 1553 gave the palace over to the local authorities and people, whatever, and it became, as I say, a house of correction. So that would have been a place where petty thievery, low-level sort of crimes prostitution, that sort of thing, you would have been sent there. And houses of correction were places where you would expect to do hard labour, and for all the prostitutes, several times a week, locals, and I'm assuming men, could pay to come and see them being degraded. They would be, stripped down to their waist and whipped, and you could pay to come see that. So I suppose an extra money-making venture. The early days of OnlyFans. Hold on, here we go. The gimbal's going again. One of these days I must buy a new gimbal. So, as I say, Bridewell Palace used to basically take up all this left-hand side. And then 1553 becomes a house of correction / prison, and that was there until 1864 when it was demolished. And obviously we've got some nicer buildings now. Well, say nicer, I'm sure the palace was a bit nice. But I know that when it was what is going on? When it was a palace under Henry VIII, this was, because Blackfriars was across the way, this was where he was negotiating his divorce, his first divorce from Catherine of Aragon. And all the negotiations were being done between Blackfriars and here. And actually, to see the name of this street, there seems to be an issue with my gimbal that every time I turn it around it goes up or down. So I'll try and keep it as straight as possible, so you might not see me so much. You can actually see this street is called Tudor Street, and the street just next one down there says Bridewell Place. So this is all reminiscent of the area's history. Now, I say the palace stroke prison was demolished in 1863, but there is one little memento left over, and we're going to see it in a minute, just up here on the left hand side. And I see the builders have very kindly started drilling just as we come up to it. You can see here, it says, "Here stood the Palace of Bridewell, built by Henry VIII in 1523 and granted by Edward VI in 1553 to the City of London to house Bridewell Royal Hospital." Didn't stay as that. Founded by Royal Charter in the same year. The present building, The present building was erected in 1802. And in 1862, the courtroom of Bridewell Royal Hospital was incorporated therein. Well, it definitely didn't. If it was given over as a hospital, it didn't stay that way. And this is the original gateway to the House of Correction. Doesn't look like a hospital door, does it? You can see the spiked tops. And take a pretty hefty key and open this one, wouldn't it? Right. So there you go, a little bit of the old Bridewell prison. Now the name Bridewell comes from a mixture of two things. There is a church called St. Bride's just around the corner, which we will be seeing. And it, at one time, no longer, it had a well. And so he ended up with the name Bridewell. Now this is Fleet Street, the junction Fleet Street just up ahead. We're going to nip round into the left and then emerge on it shortly. And actually, it might be a good time to tell you the origins of the name, why it's called Fleet Street. Basically, there was a river. I know everybody thinks of London just having the one river, the Thames, but there was numerous ones, just the rest of them are smaller. So you had like the Tyburn, the Walbrook, and here you had the River Fleet. But it was covered over some time ago. It still runs underneath, but it was covered over some time ago because in times gone by it basically became like an open sewer, and over time all of it was covered over. Right, there we go, St. Bride's Passage. You can go up the steps and through there, but we're going this way. Got a little passageway down that way, Bride Court. But where we are is called Bride Lane, and that is the beginning of Fleet Street just there. Now, I should say what Fleet Street is famous for. In the same way that in New York you've got New York, you say Wall Street, you think money. Here in London, you say Fleet Street, you think newspapers, journalism. This was where all the main newspapers used to be printed, no longer, but the name still sticks. So whenever people on the news or whatever are talking about Fleet Street, they're talking about the journalism industry. And all the main papers and the headquarters for a lot of the regional papers were all based here. Okay, so journalism and this church sort of go together. This is actually known as the Journalist Church, to colloquially, but this is St. Bride's. Now, let me get up here. Looking very festive in the pub. This is the old bell, which I'll mention in a minute. Oh yes, looking very nice. Now you can see here it says St. Bride's Church, 2,000 years of history. I'll be a step away from the sound of that roadworks. So basically, the reason why they say it's 2,000 years of history is because in the basement of this place, in the crypt, there is actually still a Roman walkway, which they reckon dates from about the year 180. So that's down in the crypt area of the church, and you can actually come to the church and visit. You can see the roadway, although it's sort of, you see it in a mirror because the way it's sort of designed. You can see it, but it's in reflection. But you can also see some of the parts from earlier versions of St. Bride's, because obviously over time there has been damage done. The Great Fire of 1666. It was damaged in World War II, and I'm sure there was other periods throughout time where parts of it were destroyed and had to be rebuilt. And you can see some of that stuff in the crypt in the church. I might nip in. I'll use my other camera. I'll see if it's open. Let's see if it's open first. And if it is, I'll go in and try and take some footage. Alright? But basically, St. Bride's, named after a 6th century saint from County Kildare, Ireland. We get in everywhere. Her name was St. Bridget, and Bride's was like and same when you have John and Jack, you would have Bridie and Bridget, similar sort of thing. And St. Bride's, as I say, it was named after her, and it has a number of bits of history related to it. There was a famous diarist, Samuel Pepys, who was one of the great London diarists. He was baptised here. I think it was around about 1600. But the association with the press begins around about 1500. You had the printing press first came to England and it was in the hands of a guy called William Caxton, who had the press down at Westminster. His assistant was a guy called Wynkyn de Worde. He was Belgian or Dutch, and whenever Caxton died, de Worde brought the press up here because he was looking for business, and obviously between religious institutions and the legal profession, which was another part of Fleet Street down towards the far end, there was plenty of demand for the services of a printing press, so he moved it up here, and he actually set up shop within the churchyard grounds of St Bride's in around about 1500. And he's buried here. He died in 1535, and he's buried here. But the tradition of the printed word in this church has continued ever since, and when you go into the church, on a lot of the seats there are sort of nameplates for various journalists throughout the ages who have come to services here and that sort of thing. So that is the reason, or a bit of history for St Bride's. It also has one other very significant bit of history for many of you, especially in Western culture, and I will just show you what it means. So hold on a minute. I'm going to try and pan upwards, see if our gimbal is playing today, because it's being a bit of a pain. Right, so if I pan up. Right, you should be able to see the spire now. All this was designed by Christopher Wren after the Great Fire, and you can see it's got a very nice design with the layers of the spire at the top there. Now, so the story behind this is there was a local baker whose name was William Rich, I think it was, and he was in love with the daughter of the guy that trained him as master baker, and he wanted to impress her and I suppose him and whatnot when it came to them getting married. And he was looking for inspiration, trying to think of what he could do that would be a bit different. And legend has it that he was working in his bakery and he looked up and he saw the spire, and that was what inspired him to create the first multi-tiered wedding cake, which has obviously been standard practice for Lord knows how many weddings ever since. So that is the story behind St Bride's Spire. All right.
They're down that way.
Alright, as I say, I'm going to nip inside. I'm going to see if I can get some footage with my regular camera, because I don't want to be disrespectful wandering around with a goat and a sort of GoPro. I can't afford a GoPro, but with our usual YouTube camera and the gimbal and everything. So I'll just nip in and see what I can get, and then I'll cut it into the video. Alright? Okay, I hope you liked that little look in around St Bride's Church. And I did promise that I would mention the Old Bell Pub, the Christmassy pub. So, oh, hold on, let me just put that back. So here it is. And the reason it gets mentioned is because after the Great Fire of London, 1666, about 80% of the city of London has been decimated by the fire, completely, destroyed. And they set about rebuilding the city. And St Bride's was one of the first churches to get rebuilt, partially thanks to the building of the pub, because obviously the builders needed somewhere to eat and drink, refreshments, all the rest of it, while they were working. And so this pub dates from that time, and actually says they're built by Sir Christopher Wren. We have been a licensed tavern for over 300 years. So the fact that this church got rebuilt so quickly after the fire is partially thanks to the fact that that pub existed, or was built for the workers. So this is the churchyard as it is now. Obviously in times gone by, no doubt it would have been somewhat bigger, but the church and the grounds have been hemmed in by the big buildings, no doubt from the newspaper era. Now, we are going to nip out into Fleet Street proper now, but we will be cutting on and off from time to time to have a look at things that are not too far to the side of Fleet Street. Now this big Art Deco building across the street, which has been boarded off, which makes you think they're going to be doing some work on it. It's a protected building, so there's only so much they can do. That was the headquarters of the Daily Express, but no longer, obviously. You see it there. And we can't see now, but just on either side of the doorway there is actually big red lettering saying Express on either side. Well, as I say, they must be doing some work, but it is a protected building. Now, I'm in two minds which way to go. Because we've got one on either side of the road that we want to see. So let's go this way first. What's the building work going on? You can see why lots of old London doesn't survive. They're forever knocking things down. As I say, this is Fleet Street proper. Now, you see here on the ground, it says Twain Office Court. And it says Sunday the 30th of April 1859, Charles Dickens penned the clause, operated out of the Cheshire Cheese Pub, now producing his journal called All Year Round. And this is the Old Cheshire Cheese. And again, this was one of the oldest ones from the time of the fire, because again, was one of the places that was there for the builders. There had been a pub here from the I think it was 1568, and then obviously got destroyed in the fire and it was rebuilt. I think it was 1667. But this is interesting. This is all the monarchs that we have had since the mid-1660s. It says they're from 1685, here's the second August. And then the years, obviously, for 70 years we had Elizabeth II, and then the current king, King Charles III, has been tagged on at the bottom. And they don't really have room for anybody else unless they go down onto that next left. So I think they're hoping Charles lasts for a while. As I say, Twain up the school. And this is a lovely old pub. Now, the main reason people tend to know about this, apart from the fact that it's very old, is that it's reputed to be where Dr. Johnson, one of the great men of English letters, who spent a fair amount of his time drinking. He formed and was part of literary societies where all the great minds of the day would have come together to discuss everything from politics to literature and no doubt religion and everything else. And him and Charles Dickens are reputed to have drunk here, although obviously in different times. Mark Twain, more recent times G.K. Chesterton, loads of really famous names in the literature are reputed to have spent time in here. Now, something has gone wrong with my microphone. I'm having one of those days. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear me okay, just with the one that's on the camera. So let's hope that the sound is not too bad. And we're just going to wander through here, because we're going to go see Dr. Johnson's house. And I should say his house, where he lived and worked for a period of time, while he was creating the first really complete English dictionary. Now, there had been earlier dictionaries, but to be honest, they weren't that cop. There weren't that much cop, and the French had sort of taken a step ahead of English in creating a decent one. And so Dr. Johnson, who, as I say, was a very distinguished English writer and sort of known socially in the higher social circles, was given the job of creating an English one. Now, he thought it would take about 3 years. In the end, with him and his assistants, it took 9. And this house at the end here, number 17, is where all the work was done. And apparently he would spend, as well as sitting while writing, he would spend a lot of time standing up and doing it, which is obviously a very trendy thing these days, standing desks. He was obviously about 300 years ahead of his time. So, as I said, it took 9 years, and he completed it in 1755, and it was the standard go-to dictionary for about 130 years. I think it wasn't until the 1880s that the Oxford dictionary came about and sort of replaced it. As you can see, you can go in and visit the house, and that house on the left, the curator's house, is said to be the smallest house in the city of London, which I could well believe. Right, these buildings here, obviously much more modern. Oh, blue plaque here which says, on this site stood Communications House, birthplace of the UK's first independent commercial radio station, LBC. Oh, this is where LBC started. I listen to LBC sometimes, well, quite frequently actually. Yeah, there we go. This is where it started. Right. Now there is a story behind 3 Golf Square at the time of Dr. Johnson. This house obviously wasn't around then. It would have looked somewhat different. These are more modern, as I say. But by all accounts, there was a doctor that lived here, and he had purchased a body that he wanted to dissect and study. And one of his maid basically asked to see the body, sort of get up close and to be a bit frightened and all the rest of it. And apparently, as you got close to it, it suddenly jumped awake. And the doctor apparently, cleaned him up, got him back to health. Because I think he'd been hung. He was definitely, that was how you got your bodies in those days. It was people who had, had some sort of execution. And obviously, it didn't take. And the doctor, got him all spruced up, got him back to health, and then gave him money to take himself off to America. And by all accounts, the person involved, don't know the name. The article I read didn't give the name of the guy. But he went off to America and did rather well for himself. And then when he died, he left his money to the doctor. So, nice ending to it. So that's the story behind number 3 Golf Square. Go down here. I have no idea what is behind the story of the multicoloured penguin, because it's not here normally. But it's obviously some sort of ongoing sculpture. Maybe it's something to do with being aware of the environment. I know about the cat. This is Hodge the cat. You see there, Hodge liked eating oysters, which at the time were basically a poor man's food. They were sort of like, sort of stuff that you'd find all the time, if you were, whatever the fishing boats and whatnot were out. They were very much one of the poverty foods. But the reason Hodge is there is because that was Dr. Johnson's cat. And he was very unusual in having a very, what we would think of as today as a very modern approach to the welfare of his animals. He's very attached to them and looked after them and all that, which at the time wasn't really the done thing. With domestic pets, I suppose they were there. Cat would have been there to catch some mice and whatnot, but it wasn't something to get affectionate about. But apparently Dr. Johnson did. Now, we're going to go down this way and try as much as possible to avoid the building works. And this is the thing about London, some of the back alleys. You get these lovely buildings, and you have no idea what's going on in them. Probably legal offices and that sort of thing. This is Bolt Court, where Dr. Johnson actually died. He was in here when he died. And this says the site of the Stationers' Company's School, 1861 to 1893. So, obviously, because the area was all to do with publishing, stationers, makes sense. Down a lot of these alleys you would have had, places that sold ink, no doubt of various types. And as the printing trade developed, there would have been typewriter repair shops, everything to do with the printing trade. There would have been little establishments dotted around. But in the 1980s, when Rupert Murdoch moved all his operations down to another part of London, down at Wapping, most of the other publishing houses followed because it was cheaper. It made more sense. And there had been a lot of union trouble, strikes and all the rest of it. And so the publishers just went, we'll get rid of a lot of you lot and we'll take the businesses elsewhere where it was a lot more profitable and easier to run. And apparently this was the site of the Medical Society of London between 1787 and 1850, and gifted by founder John Coakley Letson. Okay. Funny enough, I'm not seeing a plaque towards where Dr. Johnson was living when he died, but I know it was at Bolt Court. Alright, going to put some music on while we do all this building work, alright? Till we get to the next site. See here on the windows they got the story of some of the newspaper buildings being erected. But not as impressive as the one I'm going to show you in a minute. Oh, it looks like our next site is closed. Yeah. Alright, so I will put in a bit of footage for you from when I visited here before. I've certainly got some photographs of it. So essentially, hold on. There we go. So essentially, underneath this building, which is a legal office, behind this hoarding here, there is part of a 14th century crypt cellar, because it was part of the Whitefriars mansion. Now, earlier on we have Blackfriars, they were Dominicans. This area here, all the way down to the river and all the way up to Temple Church, was Whitefriars. And they were called Whitefriars because they wore white cloaks, and they were a Carmelite based faith. And it was, as I say, a huge big establishment. And in late 1800s, It was discovered whenever they were doing some, what's the word, redevelopment, like they're doing today. They discovered part of a crypt in the basement of one of the houses. So this place, there was lots of houses have been built over where the monastery used to be, and then it turns out part of the crypt of the monastery was being used as a cellar in somebody's house. So 1920, the News of the World paper was obviously fairly flush at the time. They had it all restored, and then in 1991, when this building was being built, they lifted the whole part of the crypt up on a crane and situated it in the basement of this building here, because that's roughly where it was found. And normally you would go down a little set of steps and you would be able to look in, and the lights would come on and all sorts. But obviously, because it must be because of the building work that's going on around the corner, I'm assuming it's all related, you can't see it. So I'll put in some pictures for you. But like I say, 14th century crypt, just found in the basement of somebody's house when it was being demolished and redeveloped. Now this whole area was known as Alsatia, and it was part of a liberty. Whoa, what on earth? It was part of a liberty. Now, I mentioned in, I think it was my Westminster video, liberties were areas associated with religious institutions. So in this case, it would have been Whitefriars. There might have been one for Blackfriars as well. But it was an area within the parish, the sort of that the church controlled. And it was an area of what sort of sanctuary. So a bit like the old movies. I can remember watching Robin Hood and somebody go rushing into the church shouting sanctuary, sanctuary. And it was this idea that came from the liberties. So as long as if you committed a crime, could be murder, could be theft, could be fraud, could be lots of different things. If you stayed within the bounds of the liberty, you were free from prosecution. You were protected by the church. Now, if you had done something that was heretical, that means against the religion in question, or against the monarch of the time, the king or the queen, then you got no protection. But anything else, they couldn't get you. And I believe Daniel Defoe, the writer, was based in this liberty for a time. He did eventually get caught and go to prison, but he was based down here for a time. And apparently he's sprinted down here because he was sitting in a pub and then saw that there was a wanted poster out for him. He wasn't even aware they were after him. And then he came down to the Liberty. So there were odd rules, like for debt collection. You were free to go wherever you wanted on a Sunday, because the bailiffs of the day, the people who were charged with getting you, didn't work on Sundays. So you were free to go about. As long as you were back here by the Monday, you were free and clear. So, as I say, this one was called Alsatia. The reason why they call it Alsatia is because, believe it or not, there is a part of land or territory between France and Germany, and for hundreds of years there have been battles over as to who actually owns it. Was it the French or was it the Germans? Alsace-Lorraine. And so, because there was some dispute about here, and even during the Civil War, you had people supporting the parliamentarians that way towards St. Paul's, people supporting the king that way towards Westminster, and this was betwixt and between, and it became known as Alsatia, much like the French-German strip of land. So I did read one story about apparently some unfortunate, I don't know if it was a debt collector or whatever, but he came after the person he was after into the area to get him when it was obviously protected. And by all accounts, in the streets and the houses where the guy was coming in to get his quarry, the cry went up, clubs, clubs, at which point all the locals came out and gave him a right good hiding. So obviously you had to stick by the rules. Now this is Magpie Alley, and Magpie is usually associated with death and sort of hangmen and all the rest of it, so I'm not sure what the origins of it are for it here. Maybe it's just a bad place to be. But as you can see, there is the whole story of the printing press in Fleet Street. There you go. If you love to laugh, read The Artful Dodger, or Ye Olde Charles Dickens. So we're at the sort of the more modern end of it here. But as you go back, Says their inauguration of the new offices of the Daily Telegraph in 1882. Here we go, the Daily Telegraph, 1848 on Fleet Street. And we go further back, all through time. But if you have open mind, that don't particularly interest you, the whole story is down here in Magpie Alley. Complete with pictures of the printing presses. And here we go, a picture of William Caxton. It's at the top there. See. William Caxton showing the first specimen of his printing to King Edward IV at the Almonry. I'm not sure what the Almonry is, but obviously it was a royal building, I would have thought. Okay. Alright. So this is Magpie Alley, bit of history. Now, I am going to play safe. I'm going to change my battery on here. Let's see what time it is. Yeah, I think the battery's going to go soon. So we'll change it now, and then we'll do the next bit of the tour. Alright. We're back up and going again. So we're going to walk back up Bouverie Street and get back up to Fleet Street. Take a quick nip up there because I just think it's a nice little court, and of course it's got the red telephone box at the end. I just think it's nice and quaint. So this is Red Lion Court. So if you ever want somewhere quiet to get your picture of, you know, on a red telephone box, if you're over this way, this is the place to come. Right, back down we go. Fleet Street is littered with them, and you can see up there is actually a gallery up there, Crane Court Gallery. This is Crane Court. You can see over there says London News Agency on that building about donut time there. So obviously a bit of a throwback to the news and journalism. And that courtyard is called Old Mitre Court. Now the Old Mitre was a pub that was here, 100 odd years ago, and that's called Mitre House. But the courtyard on the other side of those buildings is the legal district called Temple. And that's where the circular Temple Church and things is around there. But we'll do that on another day because it's not open at the weekend. This is Fetter Lane. And I mentioned Mitre Tavern, Mitre Bar, just the courtyard was there. You can see the blue plaque there, it says side of Mitre Tavern. And then there's Four's Bankers, which if I remember right, is the oldest bank, maybe it's the oldest independent bank in the UK. Now, we're going to go up this little alley. See here, it says Hen and Chicken Court. Now, I bet you're wondering why we bothered to go up here. Now, this doorway leads into, I believe, the Church St Dunstan's on the west, on the left-hand side, and it connects it to this building on the right, which I can't remember which is in it, but it's not that that's interesting. It's what reputedly used to be here, because this was supposedly where Sweeney Todd's barbershop was located. I've no doubt you might have seen the musical, or you might, Johnny Depp and all the rest would be familiar with the story. The story goes that he was a barber who, for whatever reason, would slit the throats of many of his customers, reputedly anything from 100 to 150 of them, then dumped the bodies down to his lover, Mrs. Lovett, who would make the bodies into meat pies that she would sell locally. That's the story. This is where his establishment was supposed to have been. The only trouble is, there's no actual proof of any of it. Apparently the story began in the 1840s in what were called penny dreadfuls. They were like local scandal sheets. So, murders, scandal in the politics or royalty and all the rest of it. And it was on one of those scandal sheets that the story of Sweeney Todd first came about. And apparently there was someone, a murderer, I think killed one person maybe, called Sweeney Todd. And various historians have tried to find the origins of this mass murder, and without much success. So, whether it's true, dubious, if it is, this is where it's supposed to have taken place. As you can see, it's a fairly anonymous little alleyway now. You just have to come down what I would imagine might be a creepy little alleyway to get to it. But it's one of those blink and you miss it entrances. the west. As you can see, it's got a nice big clock so you can see what time it is. And by all accounts, that was the first clock, public clock in London with minute hands, the minutes shown on it. So, a little novelty bit of information for next time you're doing the pub quiz. We'd like to go in, but it is Sunday, it's a working day. It's maybe not open. Turns out it's closed for 2 weeks anyway. The ringing must be coming from Temple Church on the other side there. Now, this is Clifford's Inn, another one of those little passages. Last time I was here they did not have all this building work going on. And I'll bet you're thinking, why have you brought us here, Colin? Is it because of this very fancy doorway? Which is very nice. But actually, well, this is what they call mock Tudor. This was actually built in the 1800s. Because it connects one of the legal Clifford's Inn, legal institution on that side, with the church. And they built this mock Tudor thing to sort of fit in with what they thought was the look of the place. So this was built in the 1800s. But no, the thing that actually interests me, and there's very few of them left in London, is this. Now, can you guess what this is? I will say one thing, it's a simple idea, but it's brilliant. I'm surprised there's not more of them about the place now. It is a device, or whatever you call it, an invention, for stopping urinating in public places. So basically, if you get caught short and you were to come up here of an evening and try to go up against this wall, it will pour off that and onto your feet, or trousers, or whatever. Simple, but very effective. And as I say, this used to be quite commonplace in a number of buildings, but now there's hardly any of them left. So, that's that little interesting bit, and you can see it stretches the whole way down here. We are almost at the end. And that was to show you this. This is Prince Henry's room. Now, let's let the buses get past. So Prince Henry was the son of James I, and this building dates from 1610. And I believe this is where he stayed for a period. He died very young, about 18, of typhoid. But this was, you know, as I say, Prince Henry's room from that time. And one of the reasons it's important, you know, architecturally speaking, is because it's one of the very few buildings that have escaped the Great Fire of London. The Tudor period ended in 1603, and this was built by 7 years later. And it was obviously still in the style of the Tudor buildings of the time. And so, yeah, it's an important little bit. Unfortunately, it's not open to the public anymore. And the reason why it's got a Catalonian flag hanging above it is because they now rent out the space from the City of London for their official business, some Catalonian-based enterprise. But apparently, early in the 1800s, the forerunner of Madame Tussaud's Waxworks was here, and it's called Mrs. Salmon's Waxworks. Why is it always women? But basically, yeah, you come here and see waxworks of famous figures, like Dr. Johnson. He was one of them, the literary figure we spoke about. What's Prince Henry's room? This is Chancery Lane, and Chancery leads up to the legal district called Chancery. And we have only got one more bit on Fleet Street to show you before it becomes the Strand. You can see over there, so some people obviously got access to Middle Temple. Big heavy doors there, so that would take you down towards the Round Church, you know, Dan Brown territory and all that. And I'm not going to talk about this building here. This is the Royal Courts, because technically, as of this statue in the middle of the road here, this is the end of Fleet Street, and this next bit is the Strand, and we will talk about that when we do the Strand. Well, as I say, this is the end of Fleet Street. And this, hang on, let me just swing around and you can see it. Well, the dragon is the sign for the City of London. And this was the boundary marker. And it used to be a thing called Temple Bar, which is now based up by St Paul's Cathedral. If you ever go up by St Paul's Cathedral, you'll see the Temple Bar gate. And it used to be based here until the 1860s. Then they moved it because they felt it was getting impeding the traffic and all the rest of it. And it went off to a private house and then got moved back up by St Paul's recently in the last sort of 30 years or so. But this is where it used to be, and by tradition, this is the only entrance that the reigning monarch can enter the City of London by. And they would stop and they would get given a symbolic sword and all this sort of thing. But this is traditionally where the monarch comes to this. If they come to the City of London, this is the method that they, the entrance that they would use. As I say, the entryway to the City of London, we are now outside. Not to be confused with the city walls. City walls were up by St Paul's and Old Bailey and all that, but this is the city boundary line. So as the city spread out and past the walls, this is where the boundary reached to. So that is today's vlog. Sorry about the microphone going. I'm going to have a look into that. I'm not sure what's happening there. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was good for you. If you did, please, drop us a line. Feel free to subscribe. You can try one of the other videos that will be about here somewhere. And once again, thanks, Brian. I will put your name in the credits at the end as my first non-known subscriber. And we'll see where we end up next time. Actually, yeah, I'm going to try and do a Christmas lights one, but this will probably come out before that. So, but anyway, I'm starting to waffle now. So as I say, thanks for watching if you got this far. Do feel free to subscribe for more, and hopefully I'll see you next time.